Imagine raising a child, sacrificing everything for them, only to be told one day that you're no longer welcome in their life. This is the heartbreaking story of a mother who gave her all, only to be pushed away by her own son, all because of the woman he married. What could drive a son to make such a painful decision? And what does this say about love, loyalty, and the complexities of family? Stay with us, because this story will leave you questioning where the line between love and betrayal truly lies. Interracial relationships are often celebrated as a beautiful blend of cultures, but they come with their own set of challenges. From societal judgments to personal biases, couples in these relationships often face pressures that others might not understand. For one young man, his marriage to a white woman was supposed to be the start of a new chapter, a love that transcended race and culture. But what he didn't anticipate was how deeply those cultural differences would affect his relationship with his own mother. The young man, let's call him Marcus, grew up in a close-knit African-American family. His mother, a strong and proud woman, had raised him single-handedly, instilling in him the values of their culture and community. She was his rock, his biggest supporter, and the person he turned to in times of need. On the other hand, Marcus's wife, Emily, came from a completely different background. She was raised in a predominantly white neighborhood with little exposure to the traditions and customs that were so important to Marcus's family. At first, everyone tried to make it work. Marcus's mother welcomed Emily into the family, hoping to bridge the gap between their worlds. But over time, small differences began to surface. Emily found it hard to connect with her mother-in-law's traditions, often feeling out of place during family gatherings. She didn't understand the significance of certain cultural practices, and her discomfort grew with each visit. On the other hand, Marcus's mother felt that Emily wasn't making enough effort to embrace their culture. She saw her daughter-in-law's hesitation as a lack of respect, and the tension between the two women began to simmer. Caught in the middle, Marcus found himself torn between the two most important women in his life. He loved his wife deeply and wanted to support her, but he also couldn't ignore the growing rift between her and his mother. Every family event became a battlefield, with Marcus trying to mediate and keep the peace. He felt the weight of his cultural identity pulling him in one direction, while his love for Emily pulled him in another. The stress began to take a toll on his marriage and his relationship with his mother, leaving him feeling helpless and overwhelmed. Things came to a head during a family dinner. Emily, frustrated by what she saw as constant cultural expectations, made a comment that deeply offended Marcus's mother. The argument that followed was explosive, with both women expressing years of pent-up frustration. Marcus, unable to bear the tension any longer, made a decision that would change everything. He asked his mother to leave, believing it was the only way to protect his marriage. It was a moment of heartbreak for everyone involved, a decision born out of love, but one that came at a great cost. This story isn't just about one family struggle. It's a reminder of how cultural differences, when left unaddressed, can create divides even in the closest of relationships. It's about the importance of understanding, empathy, and the willingness to step outside our comfort zones to bridge those gaps. Because at the end of the day, love alone isn't always enough. It takes effort, respect, and a willingness to embrace the differences that make us unique. From the outside, Emily seemed to have it all: a loving husband, a comfortable life, and a future full of promise. But beneath the surface, she carried a weight of insecurities that few understood. As a white woman married into a black family, she often felt like an outsider. She worried about saying the wrong thing, offending someone, or being judged for not fitting in. These insecurities grew with every family gathering, making her feel more isolated and out of place. Emily's discomfort around her mother-in-law wasn't just about cultural differences. It was also about the expectations she felt were placed on her. Marcus's mother was a strong, outspoken woman who took pride in her heritage and traditions. She often shared stories about their family history, expecting Emily to embrace them with the same enthusiasm. But for Emily, these traditions felt unfamiliar and overwhelming. She tried to participate, but her efforts often fell short, leaving her feeling inadequate. Over time, she began to dread spending time with her mother-in-law, seeing every interaction as a potential minefield. Marcus loved his wife deeply, and it pained him to see her so uncomfortable. He tried to reassure her, telling her that his mother meant no harm and that she just wanted to include her in the family. But Emily's growing anxiety began to affect their relationship. She would often vent her frustrations to Marcus, asking him to intervene or shield her from situations that made her uneasy. Torn between his love for Emily and his respect for his mother, Marcus found himself making small compromises, skipping family events, limiting visits, and even avoiding certain topics of conversation. These changes didn't go unnoticed by his mother, who began to feel excluded and hurt. The turning point came during a heated argument between Emily and Marcus's mother. What started as a simple misunderstanding quickly escalated into a full-blown confrontation. Emily, overwhelmed by years of pent-up frustration, lashed out, saying things she would later regret. Marcus's mother, hurt and angry, fired back, accusing Emily of disrespecting their family. In that moment, Emily realized the gravity of the situation. She saw the pain in her husband's eyes as he struggled to mediate, and she understood that her actions had consequences far beyond what she had imagined. Emily's intentions were never malicious. She simply wanted to feel accepted and comfortable in her own family. But as the dust settled, she couldn't help but wonder, was she justified in expressing her feelings, or had she gone too far? Had her insecurities blinded her to the impact of her actions on the people she loved? It was a question that would linger, forcing her to confront the complexities of love, family, and cultural identity. For Marcus's mother, her son was her pride and joy. She had raised him on her own, working long hours and making countless sacrifices to ensure he had a better life. She taught him the values of their culture, the importance of family, and the strength it takes to overcome adversity. Her love for him was unconditional, and she took immense pride in the man he had become. To her, Marcus wasn't just her son, he was her greatest achievement. When Marcus introduced Emily, his mother was hopeful. She wanted nothing more than for her son to be happy, and if Emily made him happy, then she was willing to welcome her with open arms. She imagined family gatherings filled with laughter, holidays spent together, and a future where her grandchildren would grow up surrounded by love and tradition. In her mind, Emily wasn't just a daughter-in-law. She was a new member of the family, someone who would help carry on their legacy. But as time went on, Marcus's mother began to feel a growing distance. Emily's discomfort with their family traditions was hard to ignore. She rarely participated in cultural events, often making excuses to avoid them. When she did attend, her reluctance was palpable, and it left Marcus's mother feeling hurt and unappreciated. She tried to bridge the gap, inviting Emily to learn about their heritage and share in their customs, but her efforts were met with indifference. Slowly, she began to feel excluded in her own family, as if her presence was more of a burden than a blessing. The breaking point came during a family dinner. What should have been a joyful occasion turned into a tense confrontation. Emily, frustrated by the constant cultural expectations, made a comment that cut deep. Marcus's mother, already feeling disrespected, couldn't hold back her emotions. The argument that followed was heated and painful, with years of unspoken frustrations pouring out. And then, in the midst of it all, Marcus made a decision that shattered her heart. He asked her to leave, choosing to prioritize his marriage over the woman who had given him everything. In that moment, Marcus's mother felt a pain unlike anything she had ever experienced. It wasn't just the hurt of being asked to leave. It was the realization that her son, the boy she had raised with so much love and sacrifice, had chosen to push her away. As she packed her things, her mind raced with questions. Had she done something wrong? Was she not enough? But even in her heartbreak, her love for Marcus remained unwavering. She had always loved him unconditionally, and that would never change. Yet as she walked out the door, she couldn't help but wonder if love alone was enough to heal the wounds that had been created. Marcus had always considered himself a family man. Growing up, his mother was his anchor, the one person he could always count on. So when he married Emily, he hoped to create a life that honored both his love for her and his deep connection to his mother. But as time went on, he found himself caught in an impossible situation. On one side was his wife, the woman he had chosen to spend his life with. On the other was his mother, the woman who had shaped him into the man he was. Torn between the two, Marcus felt the weight of his internal conflict growing heavier every day. At first, Marcus tried to balance the two relationships. He reassured Emily that his mother's expectations weren't meant to overwhelm her, while also encouraging his mother to be patient as Emily adjusted to their family dynamics. He hoped that, with time, the two women would find common ground. But instead of easing the tension, his efforts seemed to make things worse. Emily felt that Marcus wasn't fully supporting her, while his mother believed he was prioritizing his wife over his family. No matter what he did, someone was always left feeling hurt or neglected. As the tension between Emily and his mother escalated, Marcus felt the pressure mounting. Family gatherings, once a source of joy, became battlegrounds of awkward silences and passive-aggressive comments. He found himself constantly mediating, trying to keep the peace, but it was exhausting. The stress began to spill over into his marriage, with Emily accusing him of not standing up for her and his mother feeling increasingly isolated. Marcus felt like he was failing everyone, including himself. The breaking point came during a particularly heated argument. Emily and his mother had been clashing more frequently, but this time, it felt different. The words exchanged were sharper, the emotions raw. Marcus stood there, watching the two most important women in his life tear each other apart, and he realized he couldn't keep living like this. In that moment, he felt forced to make a choice he never wanted to make. With a heavy heart, he asked his mother to leave, hoping it would bring peace to his marriage. But even as the words left his mouth, he knew the decision would haunt him. In the days that followed, Marcus was consumed by regret. He replayed the argument in his mind, wondering if there was something he could have done differently. He missed his mother terribly, her absence a constant reminder of the cost of his decision. His relationship with Emily, though less strained, felt hollow. The guilt weighed on him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he had betrayed the woman who had given him everything. As he struggled to move forward, Marcus couldn't help but wonder if there was a way to repair what had been broken, or if some wounds were too deep to heal. After Marcus asked his mother to leave, the house felt emptier, quieter, but not in a peaceful way. It was as if a piece of their family's soul had been ripped away. Marcus tried to convince himself that he had made the right decision, that it was necessary to protect his marriage. But the silence was deafening, and the guilt gnawed at him. His mother's absence was a constant reminder of the pain he had caused. And no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had betrayed the woman who had always been there for him. Without his mother, Marcus felt untethered. The small things she used to do, calling to check on him, cooking his favorite meals, offering advice, were suddenly gone. He missed her voice, her laughter, the way she could make even the hardest days feel manageable. His relationship with Emily, though less tense, felt strained in a different way. The weight of what they had done hung over them, unspoken but ever present. Marcus began to realize that his decision hadn't just hurt his mother, it had changed him too. He felt like a stranger in his own life, unsure of how to move forward. For Emily, the days following the fallout were filled with a growing sense of guilt. At first, she had been relieved. The constant tension with her mother-in-law was gone, and she no longer felt the pressure to conform to traditions she didn't understand. But as she watched Marcus struggle with his emotions, she began to see the bigger picture. She realized that her discomfort had driven a wedge between Marcus and his mother, and that her actions had contributed to the pain they were all feeling. For the first time, she questioned whether her own insecurities had blinded her to the harm she was causing. One evening, as Marcus sat alone, lost in thought, Emily approached him. She admitted that she had been selfish, that she hadn't fully understood the impact of her actions. She told him that she wanted to make things right, not just for him, but for their family. Together, they reached out to Marcus's mother, asking for a chance to talk. It wasn't easy. The wounds were still fresh, and the pain was real. But as they sat down together, something shifted. Marcus apologized for the hurt he had caused, and his mother, through tears, expressed her own regrets. In that moment, forgiveness began to take root. The road to healing wasn't overnight. It took time, patience, and a willingness to listen and understand. But as Marcus, Emily, and his mother slowly rebuilt their relationship, they learned a powerful lesson. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting the past. It's about choosing to move forward together. It's about recognizing that everyone makes mistakes, but those mistakes don't have to define us. And sometimes it's in our darkest moments that we find the strength to forgive, to heal, and to give each other a second chance. Interracial marriages are often seen as a symbol of progress, a testament to love's ability to transcend boundaries. But behind the smiles and celebrations lies a complex reality. Society, whether intentionally or not, places immense pressure on couples in interracial relationships. From subtle biases to outright judgments, these couples often find themselves navigating a minefield of expectations and stereotypes. For Marcus and Emily, their marriage was no exception. What started as a union built on love soon became a battleground of societal pressures, each one shaping their decisions in ways they never anticipated. Marcus, a black man raised in a tight-knit community, and Emily, a white woman from a predominantly white neighborhood, came from two very different worlds. When they married, they knew there would be challenges, but they underestimated how deeply societal expectations would affect their lives. Marcus's family and community had certain cultural traditions they expected Emily to embrace, while Emily's family and friends often made comments that revealed their own biases. Caught between these two worlds, Marcus and Emily found themselves constantly trying to prove that their love was strong enough to withstand the pressure. For Emily, the societal judgments were particularly hard to ignore. She often felt like she was being watched, her every action scrutinized by both sides. When she struggled to connect with Marcus's cultural traditions, she felt judged by his family and community. At the same time, her own friends and family made comments that made her question whether she truly belonged in Marcus's world. These external pressures fueled her insecurities, making her more defensive and less willing to engage with Marcus's mother. Over time, her behavior became a reflection of the societal judgments she was trying to escape. Marcus, too, felt the weight of the societal expectations. He wanted to honor his cultural heritage and the values his mother had instilled in him, but he also wanted to support Emily and make her feel accepted. Every decision felt like a balancing act. If he pushed Emily to participate in cultural events, he risked alienating her. But if he didn't, he felt like he was betraying his roots. The pressure to please everyone, his wife, his mother, his community, left him feeling torn and exhausted. He began to wonder if it was even possible to satisfy everyone, or if he was destined to fail no matter what he did. As Marcus and Emily's struggles grew, So did the question, how much of their conflict was truly about them, and how much was shaped by the world around them? Were their choices their own, or were they being driven by the expectations and judgments of others? It was a question that forced them to confront the invisible forces shaping their lives, and one that left them wondering if they would ever be free to simply love each other without the weight of society's expectations. The air in the room was thick with tension. Emily and Marcus's mother sat across from each other, their voices rising as the argument escalated. What had started as a simple disagreement over a family tradition had quickly spiraled into something much deeper. Emily, frustrated and defensive, accused her mother-in-law of being overbearing and dismissive. Marcus's mother, hurt and angry, fired back, accusing Emily of disrespecting their family and culture. Marcus stood between them, his heart pounding, feeling like the ground was crumbling beneath his feet. This wasn't the first time tensions had flared. Over the years, small disagreements had slowly built into a mountain of resentment. There was the time Emily skipped a family reunion, claiming she had work commitments, but Marcus's mother saw it as a rejection of their traditions. Then there was the holiday dinner, where Emily made a comment about the food being too spicy, which Marcus's mother took as a slight against their culture. Each incident chipped away at their relationship, leaving behind a trail of hurt feelings and unspoken frustrations. Marcus had tried to mediate, to keep the peace, but it felt like no matter what he did, the tension only grew. He loved his wife, but he also respected his mother, and seeing the two women he cared about most at odds with each other was tearing him apart. He felt helpless, caught in the middle of a conflict he didn't know how to resolve. The stress began to take a toll on him, affecting his mood, his work, and even his health. He knew something had to give, but he didn't know what or how. The argument reached a boiling point when Emily, in a moment of anger, said something she immediately regretted. The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Marcus's mother, tears streaming down her face, turned to her son and asked, "Is this what you want? For me to leave?" Marcus, overwhelmed by emotion and exhaustion, made a decision he never thought he would make. "Maybe it's for the best," he said quietly, his voice trembling. The words felt like a betrayal, even as they left his mouth. His mother, heartbroken, nodded and began to gather her things. In the days that followed, the house felt emptier, quieter. Marcus couldn't shake the image of his mother walking out the door, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Emily, too, was haunted by the argument, replaying her words over and over in her mind. The fallout was a stark reminder of how fragile family bonds can be and how quickly they can break under the weight of unresolved conflict. As Marcus sat alone, staring at the space where his mother used to sit, he couldn't help but wonder if there was a way to repair what had been broken, or if some wounds were too deep to heal. When Marcus married Emily, he was filled with hope and excitement. He had found someone who made him feel loved, understood, and supported. Their love felt like a fresh start, a chance to build a life together that was free from the struggles of his past. In the early days of their marriage, everything seemed perfect. They laughed together, dreamed together, and faced the world as a team. Marcus believed that nothing could come between them until the cracks began to show. As time went on, Marcus noticed that Emily seemed increasingly uncomfortable around his mother. She avoided family gatherings, made excuses to skip visits, and often criticized his mother's traditions and habits. At first, Marcus tried to brush it off, thinking it was just a phase or a matter of adjustment. But as Emily's discomfort grew, so did the tension. Arguments became more frequent, and Marcus found himself constantly caught in the middle. He wanted to defend his wife, but he also couldn't ignore the hurt in his mother's eyes. The rift between the two women began to strain his marriage in ways he hadn't anticipated. In his efforts to keep the peace, Marcus made a critical mistake. He failed to truly understand his mother's feelings. He saw her frustration as stubbornness, her tears as manipulation, and her attempts to connect with Emily as overbearing. He didn't realize how much his mother was hurting, how deeply she felt rejected by the woman her son had chosen to spend his life with. To Marcus, it felt like he was being forced to choose between two people he loved, but in reality, he was overlooking the pain his mother was silently enduring. It wasn't until after the explosive argument and his decision to ask his mother to leave that Marcus began to see things differently. In the quiet moments that followed, he found himself reflecting on his mother's sacrifices, her love, and her unwavering support throughout his life. He thought about how she must have felt watching her son pull away and the loneliness she must have endured. For the first time, Marcus truly put himself in his mother's shoes, and it changed everything. He realized that empathy wasn't just about understanding someone's feelings. It was about acknowledging their pain and taking steps to heal it. Marcus's journey taught him a powerful lesson, that love alone isn't enough to sustain relationships. It takes empathy, the ability to see the world through someone else's eyes and feel what they feel. It's about recognizing that everyone has their own struggles, their own fears, and their own pain. And sometimes the greatest act of love is simply taking the time to understand. As Marcus began to rebuild his relationship with his mother, he carried this lesson with him, a reminder that true connection begins with putting yourself in others' shoes. After Marcus asked his mother to leave, she found herself in a place she never imagined, alone. The home she had helped build, the family she had nurtured, felt like a distant memory. She moved into a small apartment, trying to piece together a new life, but the emptiness was overwhelming. She missed her son terribly, the ache of his absence a constant reminder of the rift between them. Yet despite the pain, she held on to hope, hope that one day they would find their way back to each other. For Marcus, the days and weeks that followed were filled with guilt and regret. He replayed the argument in his mind, wondering if he could have handled things differently. The weight of his decision pressed down on him, affecting his sleep, his work, and his relationship with Emily. He missed his mother's presence, her laughter, her advice, the way she made everything feel okay. The guilt was a heavy burden, one he wasn't sure he could ever fully let go of. Emily, too, was struggling. At first, she had felt a sense of relief. The tension with her mother-in-law was gone, and she no longer felt the pressure to conform to traditions she didn't understand. But as she watched Marcus grapple with his emotions, her perspective began to shift. She realized that her discomfort had come at a great cost, not just to Marcus's mother, but to Marcus himself. For the first time, she saw the situation through his eyes, and it left her questioning her own actions. Was her need for acceptance worth the pain it had caused? One evening, as Marcus sat alone, lost in thought, Emily approached him. She admitted that she had been selfish, that she hadn't fully understood the impact of her actions. She told him that she wanted to make things right, not just for him, but for their family. Together they reached out to Marcus's mother, asking for a chance to talk. It wasn't easy, the wounds were still fresh, and the pain was real. But as they sat down together, something shifted. Marcus apologized for the hurt he had caused, and his mother, through tears, expressed her own regrets. In that moment, forgiveness began to take root. The journey to reconciliation was slow and painful, but it taught them all a valuable lesson, that family is not just about blood, but about the choices we make to love and understand one another. Love, no matter how strong, is not enough on its own. It requires empathy, forgiveness, and the willingness to see beyond our own pain. And choices, no matter how difficult, can always be revisited. As Marcus, Emily, and his mother began to rebuild their relationship, they carried this lesson with them. a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always a path back to love.